focus just for a moment quickly on the Matthew 19 passage. Because I think it's interesting that when Yeshua is asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He doesn't say what most of us have heard in the past, which is, accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. When you die, you'll go to heaven. He in fact says, well, do the commandments. And I think within the commandments is the idea of salvation. It's in the, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall have no other gods before me. So I think it's right up front in the 10. And by the way, they're always known as the 10 so that they do rise and fall together. And all the commandments fall under one of these 10. So these are like chapter headings.
I didn't interrupt, but I was just thinking that you know that scripture that talks about the rich man that Jesus told all things to do, and he said, well, I've done all that stuff. And he said to him, go and sell all your riches and give them to the poor.
Right, that's what we read today. That's what we were reading.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
My mind's not working right. But anyway, so I was thinking, but he said that he went away because he was going to sell the possessions. And then Yeshua says, well, the apostles said, well, who else can be saved?
Right.
He says it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle. So, what was, so the point of that was, so can anybody really, say they successfully can do the commandments? As he says, because the rich man told him he had done all that stuff.
Right, although, if you look at the commandments, he looks at the bottom half. You notice it's, you should not murder, you should not commit adultery, you should not steal, you should not bear false witness, honor your father and mother. Those are the lower half. He doesn't mention, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, you shall have no other gods before me. So I think for this individual, there was a God before him, and it was his money. It was his stuff. So he says to him, sell all the stuff. That will demonstrate that you have a heart for me. He doesn't say that to everybody. So Yeshua isn't going around saying to everybody, sell all your stuff and give it away. Go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 15 for just a moment. In regard to this, Deuteronomy chapter 15, and look at verse 7. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 7. So this is where Yeshua is coming from in talking about this. He said, verse 7, Deuteronomy 15, 7, if there is among you a poor man of your brethren within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother. But you shall open your hand wide to him, and willingly lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin among you. You shall surely give to him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him. Because for this thing, the Lord your God will bless you in all your works, and in all to which you put your hand. The poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hands wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy in your land.
If that's the case, then after the idea thing, if what's impossible for man is not impossible for God.
Right.
So is it possible for God to forgive that man and before he gives money to the poor, or if he humbles himself?
I think for that individual, at that moment, his stuff, his money, is his God. So for him, he needs to get rid of it. Not for everybody. You shouldn't go around and say this to everybody. He's sizing up this individual and saying, hey, look, for you, it's obvious that money is very important to you. It's something that you dwell on a lot, you find your security in. It's huge with you. So for you, go sell it all, come follow me. Not for everybody. He's not saying that everybody has to do that. But he's saying for this individual, that's what you need to do, because that's where you are. So I think that's important. That, and it's not that the disciples are taking this now like universal. Well, then can anybody be saved? And he's saying, look, it's not impossible. It is difficult for the rich because the rich tend to rely upon their wealth. Those who have money tend to be self-sufficient. and not look to God. They look to their money. Because they can buy their way out of most situations. So why look to God? I got this wealth. I have the money. I can do what I want with it. And I'm able to get myself out of most situations.
Now, sometimes, then again, this is just for the few that I've known too that have been very well off, that they find themselves in a position where I asked them, do you thank God for getting the money that you have, the wealth? And this person, again, just one person I talked to, the response, I got this wealth, God gave me nothing.
Ouch.
And so there's that, I built my empire of this wealth.
Right.
Who do I ever thank? So sometimes there's that kind of.
Right, and I would say to that, I would say, who gave you the mental ability? Who gives you the breath? Who gives you a heartbeat? All those things, you could never obtain anything if God didn't give you breath and a heartbeat and a brain and all these other things that go into who you are. So it's the height of hubris to say, well, I did it, because without God's help, no one can do anything. He fills your lungs, he gives you air. The minute he takes air from your lungs, you have no ability to make any money. The minute he touches your heart and you keel over, nobody has the ability at that point to make any money. So it's arrogance and it's hubris to think, well, okay, yeah, I did it. Yes, we have a part to play, but God always does the heavy lifting. He gives us strength. He gives us food. By the way, you couldn't do it if you didn't have food and water that he gives you. Yesterday I was traveling back. I went down to Portland early and then came back early. And I caught myself, it was raining, just heavy, extremely heavy coming back. And I found myself, at first I was thinking, wow, Lord, why do you have to send so much rain? And then I thought to myself, hold on, what am I saying? This is life. This is God's
blessings.
Blessing. And I stopped myself and went, Lord, thank you for the rain, because this is life. And this is your way of showing mercy on the just and the unjust. It's common grace. He doesn't just bring rain for the just, he brings rain for the unjust, who don't deserve it, which is grace. So we've had grace upon grace all along. That he sustains any of us is grace. So I just wanted to point out, as we're looking at this text in Matthew, how both Matthew and Paul put together Leviticus 19:18. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, as the summation of these commandments. Leviticus 19:18. By the way, what is Leviticus 19:18? It has all the 10 Commandments in it again. So Leviticus 19:18 orbits completely around the 10 Commandments, which is interesting because the book of Yaakov, which most know as James, also orbits around the book of Leviticus, also orbits around the chapter of Leviticus 19. It repeats it, it quotes it numerous times. Is it any wonder Martin Luther, knowing that Leviticus 19 is the source for the book of Yaakov, it's no wonder that Martin Luther didn't like the book of Yaakov. He called it a right straw epistle.
A right straw.
We could spend, if we wanted to do so, we could spend literally weeks discussing how the early fathers all the way through, the early church fathers all the way through, were both anti-Semitic and subsequently anti-Torah. We could spend a lifetime just on that concept alone. So it's no wonder we are where we are today. All right, so what I want to do, you have the handout I gave you that says the 10 words, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5. What I want to do is, I want to talk about we'll go with one thing, look at one thing first in Exodus chapter 20. I want to draw down on one thing really quick to make sure we hit this. Look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 6. It says, but showing mercy to thousands, look at this, to those who love me and keep my commandments. Over and over again in the scriptures, the love of God, loving God, and keeping his commandments are paired together. So, we have bought into a notion of love that's very romantic and very feeling-oriented. Do you love me? Okay. And people, what do people do? I understand the sentiment because I experienced it. I've experienced it as well. I've seen it. I've participated in it. People will stand in a service and go, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul. Or, they'll sing about how they love God. Any other song. And then the same people have little to no regard for the commandments of God. And biblically speaking, if one says that you love God and have no desire for the commandments of God, the scriptures say that's just not true. If you love me, keep my commandments. It equates loving God and his commandments at every turn. So I think our definition of love is oftentimes very warped because we think of it as some type of feeling. Well, I have great and grand feelings for God, therefore I love him. And God says, no, if you don't keep my commandments, you really don't love me. You say you love me. You say you have this love and affection, but your heart is far from me, really, in essence. Because love and keeping the commandments are one and the same. Over and over again. If you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. And they're juxtaposed and fitted together at every turn. Now what I want to do is, as we look at these commandments, I want to give you a narrative example of the breaking of every one of these commandments. I want to show you what each of these commandments looks like being broken. So go with me to Exodus chapter 32. Exodus chapter 32. This is the breaking of the first commandment. The golden calf is the breaking of the first two commandments. The first two commandments is, you shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make for yourself a graven image. I want to make this comment. I've seen so many times where well-meaning, well-intentioned believers have taken into their person or into their home graven images. I was just up in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big things up in Alaska for Christians to get in their homes is totem poles.
Ow.
You can't get more graven imaged than that. They're carved. And people say, well, they're beautiful works of art. True. They're a great souvenir. True. But they belong to another domain. They belong to a people who think that these are gods. And when you bring that kind of stuff into your domain, it's not healthy.
That gets to be a very fuzzy line very quickly, though.
Sure.
I mean, you gotta have to really, it sounds like you have to really kind of come back to defining graven image. Because I point out to people all the time at Christmas, and the Christmas tree is, hey, that's, well, I don't worship my tree.
Right. Again.
And we use the same argument, well, it's,
again.
And I'm not disagreeing about a totem pole, but then what about having some football player's jersey up on your wall?
Hey.
You could.
I know, and I get hard with that one on purpose.
Yeah,
because
you're right.
People do.
Right.
They say, well, I don't
Yep.
worship the football players. I go, yeah, you put his jersey up on the wall.
True, you
we
could.
build stadiums and monuments to them.
But
So
I'm talking about the overt. Right, I agree with you on that. But I'm talking about the clearly overt at this point. That's much more subjective in the sense that it really goes to the heart of the person if they're worshiping this player and if they're. But to have in your domain something that's clearly given over to another god. A whole people group believe this to be. I'll give you another example. I had a friend who joined a fraternity. So they sent him a fraternity pin. The fraternity pin was a graven image that you're supposed to wear on your lapel that was a Greek god. Because most of the sororities and fraternities are based on Greek gods. And so he was supposed to, he gets his pen for joining the fraternity, and the sororities are just like it. But you have to wear this, you're supposed to wear your graven, literally graven pen on your lapel. I looked at him and I just said, that's idolatry. And he says, yeah, you're right. We got to get rid of it. So I'm just saying these kinds of things that are overt. You're right that there's the more subjective, the more, is it idolatry in the life of that person? But clear things, for instance, like...
but a totem pole isn't idolatry in the life of somebody in Alaska who just lights it as on.
No, see, again, here's the problem with that.
Where's the
No, because it doesn't matter what you think about it. That's where we're wrong in our thinking here. It doesn't matter what you think about the totem pole. It doesn't matter what you think about the wind catcher. The question is, what does the spirit who owns that think about that?
That's right.
You're bringing something in from their domain that they consider theirs into your realm. So it doesn't matter what you...
Something that belongs to the spirit of this world.
Yes.
Like a football player's jersey.
Could be. No, because that could be.
I
That's
mean,
not clear. Because that's very subjective if the person worships that. A football jersey in and of itself is a shirt.
It seems like there's division in there.
No, what I'm saying is this. A totem pole is clear that the people who own that have given over to that, they believe that is a god.
It's like a Buddha.
Like a Buddha, a drum catcher, something that's clear. You're right that a football jersey to a person
There are
could be
lots of people groups who think that football players are gods.
true.
Oh, yeah, that's-
Absolutely true. But you can't,
Any celebrity, though.
that can be with any celebrity.
I don't disagree.
Right. It could be a singer, it could be a movie star.
I don't disagree.
Right. So, but that comes down to, is the person that has the poster of that person worshiping them, but not including them and God. However, when you have a totem pole, a wind catcher, a Buddha, or something in your home that's given over to an idol, clearly given over to an idol, it doesn't matter what you think about it, because that spirit says, hey, you know what, they got my stuff. You welcome them in. You brought your stuff into my domain. You brought my stuff into your domain. So I think that's dangerous. That's clear. Whereas a football jersey, a person could just wear a football jersey and just like the fact that it's a nice jersey and they're supporting their team. And they're not worshiping any player. They could be.
But that player is not a god.
It may be to them. It may be to them. And if that's the case, but that's a case-by-case basis. Whereas I can say unilaterally, all totem poles are problematic. All Buddhas are problematic. All wind catchers are problematic.
Brent, in the totem pole, we're told not to make an image of anything in heaven or on earth, if you want to say the air, the heavens, the earth, or beneath the earth or the
Right.
sea. On the totem pole, raven, they worship raven because he's wisdom. On the totem pole, bear, they worship bear because he's strength.
Right.
On the
You're
totem
right.
pole, they worship fish because he's food. These are the things that we're not supposed to worship.
What I'm saying is oftentimes people, I'll give you an example, another example, and it was just in our own home. My wife had gone to Mexico. I've been there as well. So we wanted to bring something back. One of the things we brought back was a sun disk.
Yeah.
Oops.
Okay? Very nice piece of art. Very lovely piece of art. But to the Mexican people, this particular sun disk, and you'd have to see the artistic stuff that went with it, they worship the sun. And this was clearly designed to be something that manifested or was cleared to be a worshiped type of symbol. It was a beautiful piece of art, don't get me wrong. But it was definitely graven. It was definitely hammered out and put into a mold. And we looked at it and I said, you know what? We got to get rid of that. So we smushed it down and then threw it away. So I'm saying things that are clearly given over to, come from a domain of the occult, or from an evil force, demonic force. If it belongs to them, it's theirs.
It's interesting because we're in a time now where federally and on a state level, the spirit, if you will, of the judicial system is attacking things like the Ten Commandments, clear pronunciations of our faith.
Right.
But on several of those same buildings, there's gargoyles,
Agreed.
demons right over the top.
I agree.
Little thing.
Yes, Roman art, very much so. Roman architecture, very much given over to this.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, yes.
Fancy buildings
Hold
in
on.
New York.
So to stick with the sun example, do you think if you had a beautiful sun that didn't come from the background of somebody who worshipped the sun, like somebody
Something
here in
whimsical.
Washington who just, making a sign.
Sure, painting, fine, I wouldn't be with a problem with that. But clearly, if the person making the item is thinking, hey, when I make this, I'm making something that goes with our God, that this is something that we could use as a focal point of worship, then I think you have a problem. But if it's just a picture, somebody took a picture of a sunset, I don't think that's a problem. But if it's a sun disk that clearly has things on it that say, hey, this is something to be worshipped by at least a people group, then I think it's a problem. But not a picture in and of itself.
Like the elephant, it's like an elephant and an elephant. But then in Asian culture, it's got like henna and a bunch of like paisleys in it. It goes toward another one of their gods.
Sure.
So it's
For
also
instance,
what it's decorated as.
there's nothing wrong with the human hand. However, within Judaism, you have the Hamza. Hold on one second. You have the Hamza, which is the all-seeing eye.
Ooh.
It's got a little eye right in the middle of it, right here. And so you'll see this Hamza symbol.
On our
It's the
dollar bill.
hand. Kabbalah. It's from Kabbalah. And so they believe that this eye can see you wherever you go. So you put it in there, and it also is a charm to protect you. So this is supposed to provide you protection. Who's providing the protection?
Like a rabbit's foot then.
Yes, go ahead.
One thing that you got to know is a friend of mine, his dad used to make totem poles for the Indian tribes. And he made 100 of them, and he taught them how to make the totem poles. And the one thing about a totem pole, before you can move it, set it up, it has to be blessed by the Indian man. And that guy is a demon. And that's the difference between a totem pole, which you think is a piece of art. Every one of them is blessed by that medicine man before they can be sold, given away, or put up.
Right. So let's go. Thank you. Go with the Exodus chapter 32. Let's read this real quick. Exodus chapter 32. This is the golden calf. Look at verse 2. And Aaron said to them, "Break off the golden earrings which are in your ears, the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. Then they said, "This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt." So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord." Notice the syncretism. This is your God. Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. And it says, and they offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Now the question becomes, what did they play? Go with me to Genesis chapter 26. Back one book, Genesis chapter 26. And look at verse 8 and 9. Genesis 26, verse 8 and 9. It says, "Now it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked through a window, and he saw, and behold, there was Isaac." Some of your texts will say, caressing, showing endearment. It's the word used here for play. To Rebekah, his wife. Same word for play. You can also go to for those of you who want to look it up, 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 14. Abner says to Joab, "Hey, let's have our young soldiers," these are two warriors in the Israeli army, two generals, Abner and Joab, and they say, "Let's have our soldiers have a little round of play." And basically it's a pugilistic blood sport where guys end up dying. That's 2 Samuel 2:14. So you see play as sex, you see it also as blood sport. So when it says they rose up to play, we could have either one or a combination going on here in the text. Okay? So Exodus 32 to 34 is the violation of the first two commandments. No graven images and no other gods before me. Both are broken right here in Exodus chapter 32 to 34. Yes?
So, the same words used here as it was at the base of Mount Sinai. Now Moses came down with the commandments and saw the people playing.
Yes.
So that can easily be seen as they're out having, whatever.
Yeah.
You get the idea. But what you just brought up with the blood sport, could it easily have just been they were fighting each other and killing each other too?
Yes, easily.
Okay. It doesn't explicitly say which of the
It
two.
doesn't say which were the two. It says the word plague, and when you look at that same word, as it's used elsewhere, it's used of sexuality and it's used of blood sport. Yes?
Do we know historically how this idol of the calf was used in Egypt?
What we do know is this, that other people around Israel used the calf as a symbol of a god, of gods. So we have a number of countries around Israel that were using the bull as a symbol of for gods. So I can show you those. I didn't want to go into that in detail, but clearly the calf or the bull is a symbol in several other cultures. So Israel is basically going along with the cultural things that are around them, and they've just come out of Egypt. And Egypt has this as well. All right. So what about the? You shall not make yourself an idol. That's the first two. Then it says this: you shall not lift up the name of Yahweh your God in vain. Okay. So what does that mean? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 24. Leviticus chapter 24, and look at verse 10. Leviticus 24:10. Somebody stand up and read that for us. Leviticus 24:10 all the way down to 17. Leviticus 24:10 to 17. This is the breaking of the name. Yes, thank you. Leviticus 24:10.
And the son of an Israelite woman, and he was a son of an Egyptian man, went out among the sons of Israel, and the son of the woman of Israel and a man of Israel fought together in the camp. And the son of the woman of Israel blasphemed the name of Yahweh and cursed. And they brought him into Moses, and his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. And they put him under guard, that it might be declared to them at the mouth of Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, bring out the reviler to the outside of the camp. And all those who heard shall lay their hands on his head, and all the congregation shall stone him. And ye shall speak to the sons of Israel, saying, when any man curses his Elohim, then he shall bear his sin. And he who blasphemes the name of Yahweh, dying, shall die. All the congregation shall certainly cast stones at him. As to the alien, so to a native, when he blasphemes the name, he shall be executed. And a man, when he strikes the life from any man, he shall surely be executed.
Okay. So there's blaspheming of the name. There's an instance where we have this happen, and they go to Moses and say, okay, what are we supposed to do? God comes back, Moses goes to God.